Imagine a time, perhaps sooner than you think, when you look up at the night sky, see that familiar rusty red speck of light, and know with absolute certainty that there are human beings living on Mars. Not just visiting, not just setting up a temporary camp, but living, tilling the alien soil, breathing recycled air inside domes of glass and steel, and gazing back at Earth, our pale blue dot, as their old home. The journey to the red planet, the billion-dollar race to colonize Mars, is more than a space mission. It's an escape plan. It's an insurance policy for the entire human species. It's the ultimate expression of our unstoppable, almost reckless ambition. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is happening. Hello and welcome back to World's Echoes. Here, we don't just tell stories about the planet we live on. We look far beyond it, searching for the deepest truths and wildest possibilities the universe has to offer. If you're a lifelong student of history, science, and the great cosmic questions, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss where we're going next. The story of colonizing Mars really begins with an uncomfortable truth about Earth. All of our eggs are in one basket. From the ancient empires to the modern superpowers, every human endeavor has been confined to this single, relatively small rock. And every single risk, a supervolcano, a global pandemic, an asteroid impact, or even a self-inflicted nuclear conflict, threatens to wipe the slate clean. Complete extinction is a long shot, yes, but the risk of a cataclysmic setback that plunges civilization back into a pre-industrial dark age is very, very real. The scientists and strategists who think about planetary-level survival have a sobering phrase for this: existential risk. And the only known antidote to an existential risk on Earth is a presence somewhere else. That somewhere else, logically and scientifically, is Mars.
Why Mars, though? Why not the Moon, which is closer? Why not Jupiter's moon Europa, with its promise of a subsurface ocean? The answer lies in Mars's unique combination of being just hostile enough to challenge us, but not so hostile that it kills us instantly. The Moon is close, certainly, but it's a geological corpse. It has no substantial atmosphere to speak of, no water ice in abundance spread across its surface, and the daylight temperatures are brutally high. Mars, on the other hand, is a distant cousin. It's cold, yes, with an average temperature of about -63 degrees Celsius. Its atmosphere is thin, 95% carbon dioxide, offering almost no protection from solar and cosmic radiation. But it possesses something far more precious than warmth or oxygen: water. Vast amounts of it, locked away beneath the polar ice caps and in the permafrost, just waiting to be harvested. You can't build a colony without water, because you can't live, grow food, or create fuel without it. Mars has enough to cover its surface to a depth of 35 meters if it were all melted. Beyond water, Mars offers the building blocks. The rust-red color comes from iron oxide, perfect for mining and construction. Its soil, or regolith, contains perchlorates, a nasty compound that must be filtered out, but it also contains all the basic minerals needed for growing certain crops in greenhouses. In short, Mars provides the raw materials and a manageable level of gravity, about 38% of Earth's, which is critical for long-term human health. It's the Goldilocks planet of the solar system. Not too hot, not too cold, but just right for a future home. The journey itself is the first massive hurdle, and it's why this is a billion-dollar race. It costs around $10,000 to send a single kilogram of anything into low Earth orbit using traditional rockets. Sending a fully equipped habitat, several tons of equipment, and a crew of half a dozen people to Mars, a 225 million kilometer journey on average, is an astronomical sum. This is where the private sector, The billionaires and their ambitious companies have stepped in to disrupt government-funded space agencies like NASA and ESA. Their approach isn't about expensive, one-off scientific missions, it's about reusability and scale. The dream of getting to Mars is dominated today by one towering figure and his company's relentless drive, the founder of SpaceX. Their entire strategy revolves around one single revolutionary concept: Starship. This isn't just a rocket. It's envisioned as a fully reusable space transport system. Think of it less like the Apollo rockets, which were designed to be discarded after use, and more like a commercial airplane that can fly multiple times a day. If you can drastically reduce the cost of launching mass into orbit, the Starship goal is to eventually drop the cost below $100 per kilogram, then the economics of building a permanent Mars base change completely. It becomes a matter of logistics, not fantasy.
The mission profile of a human journey to Mars is incredibly complex. It's not just about one rocket launch. It involves a series of launches to get the Starship vehicle itself, its crew, and the propellant for the journey out of Earth's gravity well and on the way to Mars. You need to launch the main vehicle, then launch multiple tanker ships carrying fuel to dock with it in Earth orbit, topping up the tanks for the long interplanetary voyage. Only when the fuel tanks are full and the celestial mechanics are just right, a launch window that opens for a few weeks every 26 months when Earth and Mars align optimally, can the final journey begin. The travel time itself is anywhere from 7 to 9 months, a long, quiet, and terrifying stretch of time spent in the dark, where the biggest threats are monotony, bone density loss, and cosmic rays. Upon arrival, the next impossible challenge begins: aerobraking and landing. The Starship vehicle is designed to enter the thin Martian atmosphere, use friction to slow down, and then perform a dramatic, powered, vertical landing. It's a terrifying dance of engineering. The atmosphere is just thick enough to cause heating and drag, but not thick enough to truly slow down a massive vehicle like a parachute would on Earth. If the entry angle is too shallow, you skip off the atmosphere and back into space. Too steep, and you burn up. The margin for error is razor thin. When those first crew members step out, assuming the landing is successful, they won't be greeted by adoring fans or comfortable habitats. They'll be greeted by an empty, cold, silent world that is actively trying to kill them. Their first priority won't be planting a flag. It will be survival. Setting up the necessary machinery to live off the land. This is the concept of in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. The most important resource is fuel. The thin Martian air is mostly carbon dioxide. If you can combine that with hydrogen, which can be extracted from the abundant water ice, you can create methane and oxygen. Methane is rocket fuel. Oxygen is, well, breathable air, and the oxidizer for the rocket fuel. This is the ultimate goal: make the colony self-sustaining. The returning Starship cannot rely on a massive resupply mission from Earth every time. It needs to refuel itself on Mars for the journey home. This ability to manufacture the propellant to leave Mars is the true benchmark of a successful colony. It transforms Mars from a destination into a node in a new interplanetary transport system. The initial settlement would be small, perhaps half a dozen people, living in either pressurized, prefabricated modules that landed with them, or quickly constructed habitats made from local materials. Think inflatable structures covered with thick layers of Martian regolith for radiation shielding. These first colonists will be pioneers in the truest sense of the word. Not just explorers, but engineers, farmers, doctors, and scientists rolled into one. They must be prepared to fix any problem, from a leak in their air supply to a failure in their power system, using only the tools and resources they brought or created themselves. The psychological stress alone will be immense. The 20-minute communication delay between Earth and Mars means real-time help is impossible. They will be, for the first time in human history, fundamentally and biologically alone.
This is the central tension of the billion-dollar race. Is the technology ready, or is the human spirit ready? We can design the rockets and the habitats, but can we design the society? Will the first Martians be driven by the profit motives of their corporate sponsors or by the pure scientific curiosity of their government agencies? The blending of these two goals, commerce and discovery, is what makes this particular space race different from the Apollo era. This isn't just about winning a Cold War, it's about opening a new economy, a new frontier, and eventually a new home. The echoes of our civilization are about to stretch across 225 million kilometers of vacuum. The challenge is immense, but the drive is primal. We look out at Mars not just as a place to explore, but as a place to survive. The red planet calls to us not as a barren desert, but as an opportunity to prove, once and for all, that we are not destined to remain a single-planet species. The first phase of this endeavor, getting the uncrewed cargo there and building the initial fuel production plant, is already underway in the plans of multiple entities. The race is in its early stages, but the starting gun has been fired.
The fact is, while the technological challenges of getting to Mars are staggering, a 7-month journey through the hostile vacuum of space, the true test begins the moment those first boots touch the Terra. The first crew will have arrived during a specific window of opportunity, and the laws of orbital mechanics dictate that they can't just turn around and come home when they feel like it. They are locked in. After the optimal departure window closes, they must remain on Mars for approximately 26 months until Earth and Mars swing back into alignment for a return trajectory. That is over 2 years of absolute unforgiving isolation. Think about that span of time. 26 months spent inside a pressurized tin can, constantly bombarded by cosmic radiation, relying on meticulously calibrated machines for every breath, every sip of water, and every calorie consumed. The psychological challenge of this confinement, the perpetual threat of equipment failure, and the sheer alienness of their environment is perhaps the single greatest unknown variable in the entire colonization effort. Astronauts on the International Space Station are never more than a few hours from home, and they can have real-time conversations with their families in mission control. The Martians will have none of that. That 20-minute communication delay means a simple "Houston, we have a problem" takes 40 minutes for a question and answer cycle. Any life or death decision must be made on the spot, by them, with no second opinions. This demands an entirely new breed of human being, one who possesses not just technical brilliance, but a level of emotional fortitude we have rarely, if ever, seen tested. The physical dangers are just as relentless. Outside the habitat, the primary killer isn't the cold, it's the radiation. Mars lacks a protective global magnetic field like Earth's, and its atmosphere is too thin to matter much. That means the surface is constantly bathed in high-energy solar particle events and deep space cosmic rays. Over a 2-year period, the cumulative dose of radiation would be dangerously high. The only solution is shielding. This is why the first habitat structures cannot be mere tents. They must be buried, covered by several meters of Martian soil, or built into lava tubes that offer natural protection. The pioneering crew will essentially be living in bunkers, only venturing out in heavily shielded spacesuits for critical tasks. Their lives become a perpetual cycle of minimizing exposure, a silent, unseen battle against the atomic decay of their own bodies. And then there's the long-term impact of low gravity. 38% G is enough to keep your feet on the ground, but is it enough to sustain a healthy human body over decades, or even a lifetime? Scientists are unsure. We know that long periods in the 0G of the ISS cause muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and cardiovascular issues. While 38% G is better than 0, it's not 1G. The fear is that a Martian-born generation might never be able to handle Earth's gravity, effectively creating a permanent, separate branch of humanity tethered to the red planet. This raises profound ethical questions about the kind of life we are sentencing future generations to.
This brings us to the fascinating and competitive dynamic driving the entire endeavor: the private enterprise versus the public agency. On one side, you have the entrepreneurial, capitalistic, risk-tolerant approach spearheaded by SpaceX. Their motivation is primarily expansion and profitability. They want to create a commercial transport system to space, and Mars is the ultimate proof of concept for that system. They operate with an unparalleled sense of urgency and a willingness to accept higher risks for higher rewards, a hallmark of the corporate world. Their goal is speed. Get people there and figure out the rest on the ground. On the other side, you have NASA, the European Space Agency ESA, and other government organizations. Their approach is fundamentally different: safety, science, and meticulous planning. NASA's current plans, such as the Artemis program, are designed to test the technologies on the Moon first, using it as a proving ground before the far more distant and dangerous leap to Mars. Their missions are driven by congressional funding, peer review, and a mandate to protect taxpayer money and human lives. The government is inherently risk-averse, particularly after the Challenger and Columbia disasters. The race is less about who gets there first and more about whose philosophy of exploration wins out: the rapid, iterative, high-risk model of the private sector or the careful, deliberate, safety-first model of the public sector.
But in reality, it's a partnership, a complicated, codependent relationship. NASA needs the massive lift capability and the revolutionary low-cost Starship concept that the private sector is developing to even think about a crewed Mars mission. The private companies, in turn, need the massive scientific expertise, the deep space tracking network, and the crucial funding contracts that only a government can provide. It's a dance where the private company takes the enormous risk in developing the hardware and the government acts as the demanding but deep-pocketed first customer. The fact is, the first human crew to Mars will likely be flown there on a private rocket, but the mission itself will be a hybrid operation, a mix of corporate ambition and national pride. As we debate the engineering, we must also confront the ethical and philosophical baggage we carry with us. When we talk about colonizing Mars, what do we mean? Are we simply exporting human territoriality, politics, and potential conflict to a new world? The concept of planetary protection is central to this. Current international treaties, like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, state that space is the province of all humanity and no nation can claim sovereignty over a celestial body. But what about a corporation? If a private company is the one to establish the first permanent, functioning habitat and the resource extraction necessary for its survival, do they gain de facto ownership? If they extract water ice to make rocket fuel and sell it back to Earth's orbit, do they get to set the price? These are not questions for 100 years from now. They are for the lawyers and governments today. The laws of Mars are being written now, not in dust, but in corporate contracts and international space protocols. And finally, we must address the ultimate question of planetary integrity. Mars, while seemingly sterile on the surface, may still harbor microbial life deep underground, protected from radiation by rock and heated by geothermal vents. If we send a colony without taking extreme, even impossible precautions, we risk contaminating the planet with our Earth microbes, destroying any chance of finding truly alien life, or worse, inadvertently introducing a disease to which we have no immunity. We are in a race to colonize, yes, but we must decide if we are racing toward a future of reckless exploitation or responsible, respectful expansion. It brings us to a crucial crossroad. If you could be one of the first 100 people to live and die on Mars, knowing the profound risks, but also the chance to be the father or mother of a new civilization, would you go? I genuinely love to know your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me, is the ultimate destiny of Mars to be a scientific outpost or a second home? The establishment of that first habitat is everything. It will be the single most expensive, complex, and high-stakes real estate development in history. The initial design, regardless of who builds it, is dictated by necessity. Think of it as a closed-loop ecosystem, a pressurized biosphere where everything is recycled: air,
water, and waste. The oxygen you breathe out today might be the water you drink tomorrow. The colony's ultimate success hinges on its ability to sustain that loop indefinitely. They'll be growing food hydroponically, probably in vertical farms using Martian soil as a substrate, converting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into breathable air, and constantly monitoring the power grid, which will almost certainly rely on a compact nuclear fission reactor, the only power source capable of running 24/7, independent of the Martian dust storms and its thin, distant sunlight. The first Martian colony won't be a gleaming metropolis. It will be a high-tech monastery, a testament to human engineering built for one purpose: survival.
If the initial phase of the race is about survival, about proving we can land, refuel, and stay alive for a single 26-month synod, the next phase is about expansion and permanence. Once the first crew returns safely, or perhaps after a succession of crews successfully exchange, the mission shifts entirely. It's no longer a temporary flag-planting exercise. It becomes the dawn of true colonization. The goal evolves from sending people to Mars to sending people to build Mars. This is where the idea of terraforming enters the conversation, a concept that sits right on the border of science fiction and long-range planetary engineering. Terraforming is the theoretical process of deliberately modifying a planet's atmosphere, temperature, or ecology to make it habitable for terrestrial life. For Mars, the vision is nothing less than transforming a cold, desolate desert into a world with breathable air, liquid water, and eventually, plant life. It's an undertaking that would take centuries, but the earliest steps of the process would begin with the first successful colony. How do you start warming up an entire planet? The key lies in releasing the planet's trapped carbon dioxide. Mars is cold because its atmosphere is too thin to trap heat effectively. However, a significant amount of carbon dioxide is frozen in the polar ice caps and locked up in the regolith. The idea is to trigger a runaway greenhouse effect. Early colonists might achieve this by deploying massive orbital mirrors to focus sunlight onto the polar caps, or by establishing industrial plants that release super greenhouse gases, far more potent than carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. As the planet warms even slightly, more frozen carbon dioxide evaporates, which in turn traps more heat, releasing more carbon dioxide, and so on. It's a self-sustaining cycle designed to eventually thicken the atmosphere enough to raise the temperature and, critically, allow liquid water to flow freely across the surface. Imagine the change. Instead of a sky that is a pale salmon color, the thickened atmosphere would eventually scatter sunlight to create a blue hue. The rising temperature would thaw the subsurface ice, causing vast river valleys and possibly even small seas to reform. And this is when the true biological engineering begins. Once the air pressure is high enough and liquid water is stable, carefully selected extremophile organisms, hardy earth bacteria, lichens, and mosses could be introduced. These are the vanguard of Earth's biology, designed to break down the toxic perchlorates in the soil and begin generating organic matter and eventually a small amount of breathable oxygen. This stage alone is a colossal scientific undertaking, turning a geologically dead world into a fragile, young ecosystem. But all of this, the sheer scale, the time frame, the cost, highlights the crucial geopolitical reality of the Mars race. It cannot be done by a single company or even a single nation. The billion-dollar effort quickly becomes a trillion-dollar legacy project. And because of that cost, the colonization effort is inherently tied to the pursuit of resources. Why would anyone invest so much money for so long? The answer is to create an off-Earth economy. The most immediate resource Mars offers is water ice, which is converted into rocket fuel. The first major industry on Mars won't be manufacturing, it will be refueling. Making Mars the gas station of the solar system makes economic sense for every future mission. Any vehicle heading to the asteroid belt or the outer planets could make a pit stop at Mars, refuel at a fraction of the cost of launching fuel from Earth, and continue its journey. This would cement Mars's place as a critical logistics hub in the future space economy. Beyond refueling, the scientific instruments on the Martian rovers have shown that the planet is rich in minerals, iron, nickel, magnesium, and perhaps deposits of rare earth elements critical for advanced electronics. While it's unlikely to be cheaper to haul bulk commodities back to Earth, Mars will eventually be mined to supply itself. The colony will be built out of Martian materials. Habitats will be 3D printed using regolith. Tools and components will be fabricated on-site. The colony will be an economic entity focused on self-sufficiency, reducing its dependence on that incredibly long, expensive supply line back to Earth. The expansion model for the first century will likely look like a series of small, interconnected villages rather than one massive city. These villages will be situated in strategically valuable locations, perhaps near a massive subsurface ice deposit, or adjacent to a lava tube system for natural radiation shielding, or close to a geological feature that promises easier access to metals. The early colonists will need to develop an entirely new form of transportation, high-speed pressurized trains perhaps, running inside subsurface tunnels to protect travelers from radiation and the vacuum, connecting the various research outposts and mining stations. Life on Mars will be an extraordinary blend of pioneering grit and cutting-edge automation, with robotic systems doing the most dangerous and repetitive tasks, while humans focus on maintenance, troubleshooting, and exploration. But as the colony grows, so too will be the inherent tension of its identity. Who governs Mars? The private entity that footed the bill for the first boots on the ground? The nation-state that provided the bulk of the early scientific know-how? Or will the Martian colony, separated by that critical 20-minute communication delay, inevitably develop its own sense of autonomy? History is replete with examples of colonies, from the Greek city-states to the American settlers, eventually developing an identity separate from the mother country. The sheer tyranny of distance and the necessity of self-reliance will inevitably foster a culture of independence among the Martians. They will be the first humans who know Earth only as a distant star in their sky, a world of beautiful green legends. Their loyalty, their culture, and their economy will be tied to the survival of the Red Planet.
This is the ultimate evolution of the billion-dollar race. It's not just a race to settle. It's a race to forge a new civilization. The creation of a second home for humanity, a backup drive for our consciousness and culture. When the first child is born on Mars, a child who has never felt the full weight of Earth's gravity, that will be the moment humanity ceases to be a single planet species. It will be the echo of a new world beginning, a testament to the unquenchable human desire to explore, build, and endure. The challenges of terraforming and self-governance are vast, but the ambition is what drives the current investment. The billion-dollar spending today is not about rockets. It's about buying a seat at the table of the future interplanetary economy. The final and perhaps most meaningful dimension of this billion-dollar race to colonize Mars lies not in the engineering or the resources, but in what the Red Planet will do to us. The journey to Mars is, in essence, a forced evolution, a harsh crucible that will refine human nature itself. We have discussed the physical and engineering hurdles, but the greatest challenge and the greatest reward is the sociological one. For the first time in history, a community will be created where failure is not an option. On Earth,
If the power grid goes down, someone else will eventually fix it. If the crops fail, food can be imported. On Mars, every single subsystem, the oxygen generators, the water recyclers, the radiation shields, is a life support mechanism. The Martian colonists will be bonded by intense existential interdependence that is almost unimaginable here on Earth. Political squabbles, petty feuds, or the kind of individualistic selfishness that often defines modern life will literally be a matter of life and death for the entire community. Survival demands unprecedented levels of cooperation, accountability, and problem-solving ingenuity. The very culture of Mars will be forged by necessity. It will be a society where competence is the highest moral virtue. This forced interdependence also creates a fascinating philosophical split between the Martians and Earthlings. Earth will inevitably become viewed by the Martians as the old world, a place of inefficiency, overpopulation, and self-inflicted crises. They will see themselves as the pure inheritors of humanity's pioneering spirit, the ones who had the vision and the courage to leave the nest. This psychological divide will cement the eventual demand for self-governance. How can a society that depends on nuclear reactors for heat and recycled urine for water possibly be governed by politicians 200 million kilometers away, people who breathe free air and drink fresh water on demand? The Martian identity will be one of austere resilience and profound self-reliance, an identity born from the crimson dust. And as the colonization progresses, the very definition of what it means to be human will begin to shift. The constraints of the Martian environment, the low light, the high radiation, the low gravity, will pressure the colonists toward radical technological integration. They won't just use technology, they will become inseparable from it. Consider the need for radiation protection. Will future Martians use sophisticated, bioengineered skin patches that filter cosmic rays? Will they use genetic therapies to make their bone structure denser, less susceptible to low-G deterioration? It is highly likely. The next generation of Martians may begin to diverge physically and even mentally from their Earthbound ancestors, making that first baby born under the Martian sky not just a new citizen, but a new subspecies of humanity, Homo Martianus, perhaps. This takes us to the truly deep, enduring reason why this billion-dollar race is the most important venture of our time. It satisfies a need as fundamental as hunger or love. It fulfills the human imperative to explore and to endure. When we talk about extending human civilization to Mars, we are talking about creating a planetary-scale backup for our libraries, our scientific knowledge, our art, and our history. If a catastrophe were to strike Earth, wiping out human civilization, the Martians, the echoes of our world, established on a new one, would survive. They would carry the torch of human consciousness forward, ensuring that our collective story doesn't end with a whimper on a single vulnerable planet. The pioneers who embark on this journey, whether driven by the profits of a private corporation or the mandate of a national agency, are not just astronauts. They are the seeds of a future civilization. Planting a flag for all of humanity on a distant red shore, they are undertaking the ultimate human gamble, risking everything to gain a future that transcends a single world. This is the echo that will define our century, the resounding answer to the question of whether we are a species content to merely survive or one destined to thrive across the stars. The rockets are built, the windows are opening, and the fate of two worlds rests on the success of these colossal, ambitious, and utterly necessary first steps. If you found yourself captivated by the scale and ambition of this story, please hit the like button and share this with someone who is constantly looking up at the night sky. And if you want to be part of the community that explores these deep, mind-expanding stories every week, don't forget to subscribe to World's Echoes. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon for the next journey beyond the familiar.